Thank you.
And now we have Dipti Patel, who's a data engineering manager at Zoro. She brings a blend of service experience from government and innovation in e-commerce and bridges the gap between business needs and technical teams. So welcome, Dipti.
Yep. Thank you, Angie. Let me get started with sharing my screen here first. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
Thumbs up.
All right, awesome. So, hello everyone. Really honored and super excited to be part of this incredible community of women in tech on this International Women's Day. I'm going to be talking about leading through change, especially specifically how you can guide your team, whether you are an IC, which is individual contributor, or a leader, or a people leader, or a manager. You need to guide your team to embrace the transformation. So, with that, I wish for a world where change isn't feared but embraced, where teams don't resist transformation but lean into it with confidence and curiosity. Because there's the truth, right? So change is inevitable, but great leaders, great individuals can make it seamless. So I have spent the last 15 years in technology leading teams through change. Now, whether it is adapting to new technologies, refining engineering, or shifting mindsets from a service-based execution to a true product-driven approach, right? So I've seen resistance, I've seen hesitation, I've seen transformation, and through it all, I've learned one thing, like successful change isn't about forcing people forward, but it's about making them want to move forward. So the word is want here. So with that, I am Dipti Patel, data engineering leader, a problem solver, a change advocate. I believe in true leadership is about empowering teams and fostering ownership and creating a culture where learning never stops. So today I'm going to be sharing a little tricks, a small playbook on how one can guide and embrace the change. My key motto, or what I truly believe in, is driving things with consistency. So never give up is the word here, but we need to drive through consistency. So with that, change isn't a skill, isn't just a skill, I should say, but it's more of an art. So let's look at what we will be covering today. So change can be overwhelming. So first we will look at the psychology of change. Why do people resist? There is a human psychology behind it, and we will look at it and what's happening in our brain when we ask somebody to adapt. Then we will also look at the reality of change, like what is different now. And again, I'll go a little bit back in time, and what change here means in the world of technology is what we'll look at. Real world change, now how engineering specifically has transformed. I know we heard a lot of speakers today talking about AI, and a wonderful presentation from Lynn about using AI to kind of brand yourself. So we'll look at the real world change example of how engineering has transformed. Your change leadership playbook. So this is where some practical steps that I have kind of jotted down through my experience, actionable strategies that you can use to manage change and lead it effectively. I will also briefly kind of talk about resistance, because that is the key kind of point when it comes to driving change, how to overcome that resistance or pushback. And then final takeaways of kind of, we'll wrap it up with a small analogy. So one thing you will see me going through is I'm going to relate my talk towards analogy, because I'm a big fan of analogy. I like to kind of break things simple and clear. And I found that analogy is a way that I can relate things to better. And I hope we can all today. So with that, psychology of change, right? Why people fear change, or why people fear when you ask them to adapt? Because there is a feeling of unknown, and that is something called as brain science tells us that you don't know the unknowns. And at the very first instinct in one nerve of that human brain, that's where your fear kind of builds in and drives in. So even in engineering, we deal with change daily. Our brains naturally resist disruption. So we don't want, like, if your daily routine is disrupted, would you be happy? No, right? So that's a little disruption. That change is what brings a little disruption. So also cognitive overload, right? People think that, oh, this change is going to have me more work to be done. social resistance, because you see your peers, your others resisting, because you always have resistors in a room full of people, right? But if you're focused only on resisting group of people, that's where you will also have social resistance. Loss of control, you feel that, oh, if I just say yes to everything they ask, I might not have autonomy, I might lose control. The fear of unknown is what we looked at. Also, lack of trust in leadership. Maybe something happened in the past, experiences from your previous work, current work, previous leaders, previous teams have kind of set an impression that, okay, because of change, they always ask us to change, and that's not going to work. So, lack of trust in leadership. So, this is the psychology behind the change. Let's look at the reality of change, right? So change is more than just adapting to new tools or processes. It's what I see is a mindset shift. Now, why in technology? Because technology industry shifts really fast, right? Today we have talking about AI. There was a time back we were talking about continuous deployments, which is what we'll look at a little further. So the analogy that we're going to drive home here today is change is turning a cruise ship and not a speedboat. So we'll look at it towards end as a key takeaway as well. But change is not a one-time thing; it's an ongoing process, right? There's industry research that tells us that 70% of change initiatives fail due to resistance. So that is one key thing we will also look at. So change is not a process; it's a mindset, and change in tech is happens every day. Technology is evolving. We are doing things very differently with hybrid work. Things are different. Everything is not the same, right? So that's where the digital transformation has occurred. In the world of engineering, change drastically happened. Now, if I go back in time, this is where I want to relate to. Previously, we were kind of the old world where we used to code, deploy, maintain. Our mindset was more of an output driven or output focused work that we did. Time and time, technology evolved, patterns evolved, things evolved, new business problems came in, right? So then we have a new world of engineering transformation where we solve business problems, we own business problems, we own our solutions, we drive impact. So more of an outcome focused, right? So what does this mean? So we have moved more from an waterfall approach to microservices. So long deployment cycles have turned into continuous delivery, which is termed as CI/CD in our world. So engineers today are not just coders, right? You don't just write code. They are product builders. They are problem solvers. They are automation experts, because I think there are so many problems and solution towards it. I think we need speed, scalability, automation towards it, right? So think of this as more of a cross collaboration within the teams, right? You're not just doing your own work if you're part of one team, but there is a need for you to know what's happening on other side of the room, what's happening on the other side of the world, what's happening on my computator's world, right? So you need to be very cross functional, very collaborative, also work with speed. You cannot have long deployment cycles or take work at their own pace, right? You have to work with speed and agility. So let's look at a real world change example, right? Which is what I talked about. Engineering has redefined in the last decade, right? And now with the evolution of AI, rise of AI and automation, it's no longer science fiction. AI is part of our daily workflows, right? Shaping the way we build, deploy, and scale technology. Now, another way before AI is because shift the industry had, which is DevOps and CI/CD, right? The long development cycles, and now versus continuous deployments. So engineers in the old world, if you see, engineers kind of handed their work. There was a team who kind of used to deploy things, but now the expectation has changed, right? Companies like Google, Netflix have embraced this change completely, right? We have seen bigger shifts in how engineers work. So AI is not here to replace engineers, I would say, but it is more here to augment our abilities, help us be more effective and efficient in our repetitive task that we do, so that we can more focus on high value or problem solving that business today requires, right? So the bar has been raised. we are becoming a system of architects, automation experts, AI collaborators. The future isn't about just kind of, you do your old thing and work in your old way. So change is not optional here. It is a baseline. So if you, I have something here which Amazon, the strategy that Amazon works on is you build it, you run it, became the rule, right? Everybody needs to play multiple roles. So with this, you have to adopt, you have to lead this change in a very, very, very niche and consistent way within your teams. If you're a people leader or a manager, you need to kind of have two more adaptability concepts of empathetic leadership involved in driving the change. If you're an individual contributor, you need to understand that the old way of working has changed and only adaptability is going to take us far away, right? I think you have to build that muscle in your brain of how you're going to think of change, not as a disruption but more of an opportunity. So, which is what we will look here, right? So, my playbook. This is something I have kind of, with my experience, I feel that this 6 key points here will definitely help drive individual contributors or leaders, drive the transformation they need to bring without creating the chaos, right? So, normalize. So reframe change as an opportunity, set the tone. Normalize the fear, normalize the fear through empathetic leadership, right? So acknowledge the concerns. When you ask people to change the way they have been working, to adapt new processes, new style, the brain science kicks in, right? So you have to understand and be empathetic there. I think you have to make them feel that there is a safe place for discussion. There will be room full of opinions, right? You have to be a listener and kind of listen to that room full of opinions. That's where you listen to people, listen to the thought process, and start reframing this change as an opportunity for them. Now, instead of focusing on what's lost, what we will not do, just focus on what we will gain by doing this differently. So add context, right? As much as context as possible. So reframing the opportunity is going to be the key number one kind of playbook that we should kind of try to use this. Communicate with facts. So this is something interesting I learned throughout my mentorship. As people leaders or as managers, you do provide context as to where things are going. When digital transformation happened, you do provide context as to why we are doing certain things differently, right? But always provide or back it up with facts. You have to learn to use the data to kind of prove out that this change is not going to be anything fearful, but only going to take us to that finish line and be the North Star for us to receive where the goal where we have to go, right? So people trust data. Like use that, you back it up on why change is necessary. So always communicate with facts. This has extremely been helpful for me, where we try to constantly say, with the help of AI, evolving AI, we say, why do we need to do certain things differently? Why do we need to optimize and use the technology at our hand, right? So data has always proven to be the case. Lead by example. This is my favorite thing to do, right? I do follow that. If you need to, so there's a quite saying that if you need the world to change, you have to be the first one to kind of lead or embrace it, right? So show that you believe in this change, embrace that change, follow, show them examples of you as an individual or a leader, how you are going to adapt to this change. This will require you to give in more first at the first, right? So this is where you kind of take that step back, observe the room. You don't kind of hold the hand, but you definitely provide a guiding path. That's how you lead by example. So it's not about doing the work for others or doing other people's work, but it's about guiding them, providing the right guidance. Also, I would like to call that term as knowledge sharing, right? It's always good to share knowledge. It's always good to share what you have learned with others so they can have an aha moment and kind of learn to follow that and lead that. Be a listener. So sometimes people just need to be heard. Recently I kind of had this, in the world of digital transformation, right? You will always have days where I call as hot and cold, right? Some days you feel that everybody's just resisting, nobody relates, nobody understands, whereas on other days people are cooperating, working towards it, are innovating, coming up with new ideas for opportunities to drive, right? So you have to be that listener, so to make the people you work with always feel heard, so that they are on board, right? Listening is a great skill to develop. I've learned this in my career, kind of throughout my pace, that yes, sometimes you don't always have to answer, but just listen. And I think it solves half the battle there. The last thing, say a little, do more. This is interesting. And the way I would like to say about this is, you don't have to every minute, every moment talk about this is the change we are going to do. This is how we used to do. This is how we will do. So I think talk less about the change, but do more of it, right? And again, this is where actions speak louder than words. Demonstrate the value instead of just talking about it, right? I think talking is not going to help. This is where I also would try to coincide this with, lead by example, be very practical, use the data at hand, say little about the change, do more. I think that's going to kind of take you places. So think about this as in terms of our technology. If we are releasing a new API version and we shut down the old version, you don't you introduce the new version to everybody, but you have the adopters test it and you slowly phase out the old one. So change in teams work the same way, right? I would like to say one analogy here related to the traffic light and roundabouts. It's also a favorite. Traffic light system, the old way of working, right, where everybody controls, this one person who controls every move. People don't make a change without any permission. They follow strict instructions. I would say that's the old way of working. Now we are in the world of roundabouts, a new way of working, right, where you provide guidelines, but as teams, individuals self navigate, adjusting on what's happening. So, this is really important. We are in the world of roundabouts and not traffic lights anymore. So, the goal of change is shift from command and control to a more adaptive, empowered decision making approach, right? So, the lesson is trust your team with autonomy, right? You provide the guardrails and let them run the show. And then things will already self adjust, and you will have an efficient kind of working way through the change that you wanted to bring in. So my playbook here. With that, one last thing on handling resistance, right? People, not everyone will always be on board when you start the change. Some will adopt, others will resist, right? But what you have to look out is in the room where you are driving the change, look for those nodders, look for those change champions. Those are the people whom you have to focus on, right? Address resistance, not that ignore it, right? But your focus should be on change champions. Use small successes and data stories to kind of show the small wins, right? And you have always have to balance urgency with empathy. With change fatigue is actually real, right? So you have to pace it right. You cannot please everybody, you cannot get everything done, so you have to pace it really right. And reinforce change through repetition. Repetitive reinforcement is a new habit that we have to cultivate and adapt to it, right? Again, so people are more likely to adapt to change if they see their peers doing it successful. So identifying your nodders, your change champions, and working with them is going to be your key successful recipe to handle resistance. So with that, key takeaways, right? Change doesn't happen overnight. You have to lead the change through transformative ways. In small steps matter, right? Small, consistent actions, series of intentional actions over time does matter. Now, people will resist change, but you have to be more transparent. So, clear communication is the key piece. Don't have to sugarcoat every time. You have to say the truth in a very nice and professional way, right? Celebrate small wins, right? I think we always wait for bigger picture or bigger wins, but even small things can, boost the performance and build confidence among the team. Authentic leadership. This is also very important, right? You cannot drive lasting change unless you lead with authenticity. Everybody brings something great to the table, so you have to watch that you're not being the other person or the previous leader, but your own authentic self when you're trying to drive change. I work at my company. I work with a woman leader, Sandy Madison, and she is, my role model who champions collaboration with technology and business teams to drive innovation. Right. So change isn't just about technology. You have to align your teams so that you can empower. So with that, I want to end it with a powerful analogy that I was talking about, that you drive change. Not as a speedboat, but slow and steady steps. And over the period of time, moving in the right direction, you will see the transformation that you're trying to drive. So thank you, everyone. And now I would like to bring it back to the group here. So think about one action you can take today to lead and bring change in your teams.
Thank you for this inspiring talk about change management. There's so